So, right livelihood. This one doesn't get a lot of talk when you go and look at all the other sources on the full path that Tico so helpfully compiled with us. Most of them only give a few sentences to right livelihood. Basically, just what not to do. Don't poison people, don't get involved in poisons, don't traffic weapons, don't kill, don't traffic slaves. Basically, things that for the most part we don't worry about these days, which may be one of the reasons why it doesn't get a lot of talk about compared to the others. So I went looking for specialty sources, things that went into it in more depth. And I'm going to talk about those in a bit here. But I wanted to start with what I initially came up with when I wanted to do this talk, when I signed up for it. I felt I had some relevant personal experience. Uh, I recently had my computer go really bad on me, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I couldn't get anyone because it went bad over Labor Day. So I found someone local, and he saw it, he fixed it, and after he fixed it, he told me that if anything went bad again, to bring it back to him and he would fix it for free. And then as long as it was still the additional problem, he would continue with it like that until it either got better or it didn't get better, in which case he would refund all my money. And he said that the people called him crazy when he originally started with this business model, but it's done him a great good service over the years because people recommend him, people come back to him, people want to talk to him again, people want to do business with him. And I think Tom with Eagle Tech Computer Services is an excellent example of right livelihood, of finding a way to provide a service in a moral and ethically, an ethically good conduct manner. And I want to contrast that with my ex-husband, who was in sales for many years. And one of the parts about right livelihood, they do, when they talk about what the Buddha talks about, they do go on to say to abstain from working in deceptive industries, to avoid basically deceitful, deceptive practices that try to harm people through, getting their money and so forth. And while sales is definitely one that encourages that, the point I wanted to make with that is that some industries warp your very being just by being in them. Sales, car sales in particular, was the one my ex was in. They demand that they actually demand that sorry, I start off with they do not pay you a wage. You're paid solely on how much money you make. The management treats their salesmen with high pressure tactics. They demand that they make a certain amount, that they carry out in ethical conduct, and they reward backstabbing reward salesmen who backstab their other salespeople. It is it is a completely unethical industry. And I would I might be going too far to say that it would turn someone into a sociopath, but it is definitely an example of a place where it is not a good idea for someone who wants to live a moral life to work. But to get back into the the less concrete examples, some of the concepts that I discovered when I was browsing YouTube and looking up online were some concepts of what living your life well and effectively would be. And one of those is finding your purpose and living it to the fullest, intending no harm, which is as opposed to, sorry, I'm expressing myself badly here. Last week we discussed one of Shokai's sources that said that you should avoid serious harm. And the discussion I listened to said that while doing no harm is the ideal, functionally intending no harm being done is just about the same thing when it comes to making your way in in economic point of view. So intending no harm and to not do that which interferes with your peace of mind, your purpose in life, or your meditation. So should those be different things? And the speaker I was listening to actually made a point of saying that should your job get in the way of following the Buddha, you should probably find a different line of work. I found that a very interesting, if radical, viewpoint. And then another concept that came up were two different examples given by two different speakers, the dentist and the butcher. The dentist, who as a part of his training was required to dissect a mouse, or sorry, do dental work on a mouse and then kill the mouse afterwards. And he refused, and he went to his advisor and told them that if this was a requirement, he was going to have to drop out. And apparently his advisor cried, but he refused to relent, and they went ahead and said that they would just consider it to be a virtual mouse, and it was virtually killed, and they would just give him a pass on it. So that one turned out really well for him. And the other was the chef, who was training to be a chef. And in the course of getting his license to practice, which apparently food service required one in the country he was living in, he had to train to be a butcher as well. He had to be able to prove that he knew how to butcher an animal and properly serve the meat. And he, instead of refusing, went to talk to his teacher, and his teacher told him that he was also a Buddhist. And his teacher told him of their own training, where they were taken to the morgue and shown corpses and told to reflect on the nature of impermanence. And he was told that he wasn't the one who killed the animal. He wasn't the one who was going to eat the animal because he was a vegetarian. And he was also providing an essential service by feeding people so that it therefore did not violate his views. And those are two very different examples, and I don't know that I could speak to either one of them being incorrect, but I feel they definitely illustrate the different viewpoints that can be taken on this subject. There's one more bit of the Buddhist teaching, which is about right livelihood, although I don't know that it is part directly of the Noble Eightfold Path because I was unable to find a good original source for it. But he listed 4 things that lead to the good and happiness of the doer, which I have paraphrased. Persistent effort, doing your job skillfully and diligently. Watchfulness, saving your money, valuing what you purchase and treating it well. Good friendship, being part of the community, both at work and at home. And balanced livelihood, living neither an extravagant nor a miserly life, avoiding the two extremes. In my own past, I have not done well at proper livelihood, at right livelihood. In my defense, I wasn't a Buddhist then, and I was living with undiagnosed, untreated bipolar disorder. But I'm still rather ashamed of my behavior. I was not diligent. I was quite skillful and I was well suited to the job I had, but I was lazy and I'd allowed it to turn me into something that would be better described as lawful evil. I followed all the rules, but I did them for my own purposes and for my own benefit without regard to the welfare of others. Which leads me to some questions for you all. Based on all this information I've just given you, what do you think? Should we take a job knowing that it will enhance our tendencies to do harm? Or leave a job knowing that we are doing harm? I didn't know that it would enhance my tendencies to do harm, but I knew that I was doing harm. Should I have left? Would that have been a better idea? Or I don't, for myself, I don't know because I wasn't a better person then. I wasn't really looking to be a better person. So I probably would have done harm anyway. But I think it's a rather nuanced issue because I don't think it's black or white. I think there are many shades of gray, as with the dentist versus the cook. Anyway, I'll open it to you guys now. Oh, and I'm going to include a link to my favorite video on the subject in the chat.
How long is that video?
Without looking, I would say no more than a half hour.
No, not something we could just listen to for a few
Oh,
minutes.
no. That I was looking for videos that actually got into the meat of it, not just rushed right through it.
Okay.
So I have a question, maybe and a thought, but I think like you said, Dixie, from my point of view, it's not a simple thing to address. It's complicated because sometimes there's no choice. You need to work so you can take care of your family or take care of yourself. And there's not a lot of job opportunity. You don't have a choice. So was there anything that you read that talked about if you are in a maybe wrong livelihood or a livelihood that's not really all that I don't know, supportive of changing that, of working as part of your purpose to work doing no harm and to try and make people make that a better place and help people understand and have a different perspective on their behavior?
There were some nuances to it. One was that there's of course always the consideration that indeed you do need, some people desperately need to find any work they can get, and that it indeed does sometimes involve that doing things that you might not be the best for you. And that in such cases, the best thing to do is to hold on as long as you can until you can find something better. But another nuance they described was working for companies that are doing bad things or working in with companies with departments. Your department head is behaving in a corrupt manner, how to handle that.
Yeah.
And also discussed I've completely forgotten what I was about to say. But in those situations, there is indeed nuance. For instance, oh yeah, but as far as the corrupt department head, they did indeed suggest, transferring to a different department, reporting what you saw, or just changing jobs entirely if possible. That's not something you want as part of your karma. But as far as dealing with other factors, they did discuss one interesting point, which is how to deal with gossip. What if you want to maintain community with your coworkers, but suppose they are inveterate gossips who are perhaps even mean with it? And the example they gave for right behavior in that case was to listen, be part of the group, but when everyone else starts talking mean, instead say nice things, true things, but nice things about other people. Lift people up, and that this will indeed have a beneficial effect. Because, and I could see where they're coming from, because coming from a religious background, I can tell you already that scorning the group or rebuking them is not really a good idea, nor does it bring about change. Whereas the idea of remaining but saying good things about deserved good things about others could indeed bring about good things both for yourself and for them. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it kind of helps point the right direction.
Dixie, what an interesting talk. So there's so much to think about. And I can think of several when I think of the different jobs that I've had, and I never was forced into the position of having to be a butcher, or having some horrendous job, that you felt terrible doing. I've been fortunate to have jobs that I felt fine about, except it's possible to have a job like I ran the lab at the water treatment um, facility in a city, local city, for a few years, and it was a wonderful job, and I was making clean water. This was quite a while ago. The then plant manager wanted me to not fudge the data. We had to report to the EPA, and and he didn't like explicitly say, I want you to put fake numbers, give me fake numbers, but he wanted me to do bad science, like take samples at the best times of day and stuff like that. So um, it's possible to, I don't, I, I just said okay and didn't do it, I just agreed with everything and then just did what I always did. But it's possible to have a really great job like that and it can go bad on you, you know? And, my husband, when we were young, it was back in the 70s, when in college we were both pre-vet, and one of the requirements was you had to work in an animal related job for a certain amount of time. And he got a job. This was in the 70s, and this was kind of the bad old days for the um, Multnomah County Animal Control. And anybody who worked there, who knows that organization would agree that that was a pretty dismal time. I think that they run a good outfit now, but this was before that. And he found himself in this situation where people were cruel to the animals and disrespectful. Um, and he, in a kind of a wonderful situation, actually got fired from that job because he didn't, they told him that he didn't fit into the culture, which was a badge of honor, really. It was wonderful. Of course, he felt bad being fired at the time, but now I think I'm so proud that he didn't fit into that culture.
Yeah, that actually speaks to one of the example of the chef I was talking about. When they were training, they would be working anywhere from 12 to 18-hour days and not being paid for any of it. It was called interning. And they were expected to fill out timesheets and told to write when asked when writing the number of hours they worked, they were told to just write 8. And our Buddhist chef, he wasn't getting paid, and he decided, I'm not going to let this affect my morals anymore. And so he wrote down the numbers of hours he actually worked. He figured it wouldn't matter because he wasn't getting paid. So, why not be honest? And lo and behold, a week later, he was called into HR and asked why he was lying on his time card. Because everyone else was just writing 8.
So what was his answer?
He wasn't lying. They were.
Right, and they didn't take that too well?
They didn't do anything one way or the other. They weren't paying him.
Right. Good for him.
Yeah, I agree.
That's really interesting. I had a job where people did that, but in a good way. Like, well, they thought it was a good way. The employees wanted to save the company money because they weren't ever coerced into reporting fewer hours than they worked. Not at all. But they tended to work a lot more hours than they documented because they loved the agency and they didn't want to. It was a nonprofit, and their hearts were in it. And they also, in me included, tended to, like teachers, buying their own materials. They did that kind of thing, um, and felt virtuous about it. But it wasn't that virtuous because um, management never got a really honest picture of how much time was needed to do the work, and what the expenses of running the agency were. So that was another kind of twist on livelihood.
Dishonesty affects us all, even if it's done for a good reason.
Dennis, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I was just gonna reinforce the uh, difficulties of being a car salesman. I had the misfortune of having to sell cars for a while, and the whole business model was to force people into overspending, buying something they didn't need, and getting them to pay the highest interest rate, and et cetera, et cetera. And I wouldn't do it. In fact, they overheard me talk this lady out of buying a car because it was, she clearly didn't have enough money. The loan was going to cost her way more than the car was worth. And I torpedoed the sale and got fired for it. And I told him, I said, I just can't do this because it's wrong. we're cheating this person. And I think any job you're in, you have to draw your own personal line where you won't go past this point, where you're being asked to do something that doesn't feel right. You just have to say, we're not going there. I'm not going to do that. Whatever the consequences, that's the way it is. I've been in sales in different areas. Technical sales was okay because it's technical. There's no real, you can't hide anything. It's not like trying to get someone to buy a more expensive car than they really need. It's just whatever it is that they need. But I also had the misfortune of selling solar panels, and it was the same situation. They oversell people more than what they could, which you think that they could have afforded. And I could have been wrong. Maybe they could have afforded it, but it just didn't feel good. I quit. So now I grow trees and give them away. So that's a good job. I love it. I come home dirty and tired, but happy.
I think the difficulty when it comes with working and this is that you usually have either official sanction or pressure from your superiors to do what you choose to do, what you do. And in the case of sales, it's definitely deliberate pressure to be dishonest. I know that my ex was encouraged to not even care about what the sticker price was, to just make something up. But in the case, my own case, where I was working and doing very poorly, I had official sanction to behave however I pleased because I was getting results. No one told me to be dishonest. No one told me to be lazy. No one told me to do any of those things. But it was okay because I was making the money. I was doing the work well. And it's a lot easier to stand up for something when it's not being approved of by other people, I think, in my opinion.
I was thinking about this in a once removed way. What is your money doing that you have in a retirement account, perhaps? Are you in sympathy with the students who are striking at university to say that they should divest of stock in harmful industry? Would I, as a retired teacher, go and stand in a peaceful demonstration at the university to encourage them to divest?
I think that's a very good point. One of the things discussed that I heard was that you really need to not get involved with unethical practices, but in the case of retirement accounts, of course, of which I have one, in this day and age, it can be almost impossible to find out whether or not people are engaging in unethical activity.
Each of the funds is owned by some other fund or two or three. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't track.
Oh yeah, my accountant told me that big industries that I feel aren't doing the globe any good, like fossil fuel, and they are so entrenched in the stock market. They have their tentacles everywhere. So it's really not easy to divest, even if you can see their portfolio. It's pretty much just get out of the game if, you know, that's the kind of, to me, boogeyman I want to divest in. And when I called my accountant, I don't know, like 10 years ago, she said, I can get you out of firearms and tobacco this afternoon. I said, well, yeah, let's do that. And then, but it's just that difficult. And I've heard that from other brokers too. And I didn't have that much to concern myself. I mean, I wasn't a big player, but it's deliberately diluted across the board so that I don't think they were looking at people that want to divest. It's just that was their way of their own protection and security as things may go awry. But I don't think we ever make a decision just for one reason. And my heart goes out to friends that are doing their best with integrity and maybe are in an okay company, even a company doing service, but their immediate boss may be so difficult. And sometimes lateral moves are not as easy, and you don't want to get tangled up in the gossip so that, you know, you're identified that way. But I know in the, I want to say, early 90s, there was a paperback book that, I don't know the author, I never read the book because it was so popular. It was a paperback book that got worn out being passed around. It was How to Work for a Jerk. But it's like, it happens, and even, you know, hard to keep our integrity. But I know for me, I look at my friends in the workforce and I applaud them, and yet I'm not judging if I think they're working for like Lockheed Martin, and, you know, it's not my job to judge because I know they're good people. Thank you, Dixie, for your presenting this. I want to say one positive thing. I listen to KBOO Community Radio, and there is, you know, in October, the Nobel Prizes are announced in different disciplines. And there is a Right Livelihood Award. I think it comes out of Asia. I don't know who sponsors it, but a number of communities. I forgot to write down who got that this October, but it's encouraging to know it's out there on the world stage.
Thank you, Ruth Ann. I did indeed read about that award when I was doing my research. One thought I did want to pass on to all of you was only one of the people I listened to mentioned this. But even though almost all of us almost all of us are retired now, or at least the majority of us, that just because we aren't employed doesn't mean we aren't engaged in the business of living. It doesn't mean we don't have a livelihood. It doesn't mean we don't have a pursuit, a purpose, or a name. It doesn't mean that we can't live those well as well. That's one that I'm still chewing over myself, because I definitely have my own pursuits. And one of those, writing, I felt very called out by some of the things that the Buddha said about the theater and how acting makes people with a tendency towards aversion become more averts, and people with a tendency towards clinging to cling more, because it presents things in terms of absolutes, good and evil, and that bad things happen to those who promote that kind of thing. And I've felt really called out about that as a writer. So just because we're no longer employed doesn't mean we're not still engaged in the process of creating a life for ourselves.
Did the Buddha talk about theater? Is that what you said?
Yes, I was reading I'm investigating, trying to find the original text of what the Buddha said about the noble path, as opposed to just reading commentaries about it. And I stumbled across him talking to an actor and and the Buddha kept telling the actor, just don't do it. I'm not gonna talk about it, just don't do it. And finally the actor persisted long enough that he told him that you'll end up in the laughing hells if you continue to just try to make people laugh. I don't really understand all of what that means. There's a lot of cultural references that I don't get, but I definitely understand the whole point of fiction, putting things in absolutes and making people inclined towards certain, quite possibly unwholesome ways of thinking and action.
is it not also possible for theater and fiction to do the opposite and uplift people? And
Absolutely. But as a writer, I know that I've written based on, I generally write my trauma into the characters, and then I let let the situations play out and see what happens. And I found that over reflecting over it, that they all follow a certain pattern, and they are all very not good. I mean, I'm sure that some people are uplifted by it, and I know that people have remarked in the past that they feel better, that it made their day better for read because I write a lot of humor. But I can definitely see where they're going with saying that that reading about characters seeking revenge and getting revenge and on the evil can definitely predispose you to believing that there is evil,
hmm.
that people are evil, as opposed to causes and circumstances making them that way. I write fan fiction for the most part, and I'm currently writing in the Star Wars universe. And the big villain there is, of course, Emperor Palpatine, the Darth Lord of the world. And as a writer, killing him off is an easy one because, he's the big bad evil. But in the real world, people aren't quite like that. Their tales are sadder. Even the people who are truly producing evil, I don't know that I can say I'm any better than they are. I just know it. That's really the only difference between me and them. Because most of us are working for what we think is right, but we don't necessarily know what right is or how to accomplish it. Which I guess is the point of the whole Noble Eightfold Path, is showing us how to accomplish it.
Well, that's an interesting viewpoint, but I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't want to live in a world without literature and theater.
I don't know that we need to live in a world without that. I mean, I'm saying that I'm re-examining my own choices. I'm re-examining my own what I'm putting out in the world. I'm re-examining what messages am I unknowingly sending.
Yeah, so that's like just being really mindful about your writing.
Trying to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can say, we've made the car salesman the villain tonight, but I think that there could be an honest car salesman, and there are honest salespeople in some lines of work, and it's the same with theater and writing. There's some theater that's not worth seeing or reading or doing, and there are books that are not worth looking at. It's the, what's behind it that's important.
There was an honest car salesman, but he got fired.
I'm afraid Dennis says the truth of it on that one.
Oh, I'd like to share what I heard a couple of times on alternative radio. In New Zealand, they were recruiting for police, and so they put out this question in the video: do you care enough to be a cop? And coming from that approach, rather than seeing police as, representing violence and judgment. And so they did a video about helping, being in the community and helping. And they said they had a lot better response than a particular state in the U.S. that put out a video about recruiting police in their small southern town. And their video was about driving a tank through this small community. So, of course, what is looked at, the intention of the company, none of us can change that. But, and sometimes we don't know what a job involves unless we're in it. But like mentioned earlier, maybe in our own little work community, we could, hold the space of being fair and like these traits, if we can manage to do that. But sometimes, what company is looking for in the first place, a good company, I think, would have almost like a mission statement that you could pull out and not so hidden.
Well, those are very good points. On the topic of policemen, one of my sources commented that that was a very bodhisattva profession because you you protected people. Your mission statement was to protect others. But as you brought up, that is oftentimes not what is actually done. Yet, my personal viewpoint in response to what Lexi and Teiko were saying about writing, I don't know that we're necessarily trying to change the way the world works so much as trying to change ourselves, and that through changing ourselves, that will change the world.
That makes a lot of sense to me, Dixie, that say if you're an actor and you're making violent films or you know you could choose to not do that and make more wholesome films. um I I just didn't know that the Buddha had such strong views on that.
I really enjoyed your talk. It really makes us think about it. About what we did as for our employment and what we do now. It's really interesting.
Thank you, Penny.
When
Yeah.
I was
I did
Oh.
too. Did too, and I think like back to the policemen and other things, like unfortunately, that there's stereotypes and then we seem to categorize people like in my experience, a lot of times it's the people that don't, this negative stereotype and of the bullies, policemen being bullies, when I don't know what we would do without them. And if we could elevate that side of the situation, the kindness. Sometimes I think it's the bad side that gets the attention instead of the good side, the balancing side that gets elevated too. Like you're saying, it's like sayings of, look at our policemen taking care of us and look what they do and having and promoting that. People, I'd hate to be married to or be a policeman and be married to a policeman. You'd never know if they're really going to come home at night. It'd be scary, It's a dangerous job. People who do that are brave and courageous, and there's bad eggs in every basket, but I wish we could promote the goodness as much as we seem to give attention to the badness.
Very well said, Trish. I absolutely agree 100%. Maybe that's one of the things we could do as writers is to help promote what's good.
But yes, Dixie, thank you. You brought a lot of things up that are not easy to wrap my arms around because there's at least 2 points of view, or probably many. So it's very, very good for thinking. I mean, stuff to think about. Thank you. Provocative.
You're welcome. One of the points that one of the speakers brought up was that the Buddha phrased most of its white livelihood sayings on saying, no, don't do this. This is not what you should do. He didn't actually say much about this is what you should do, because
Yeah.
it's indeed something we have to determine for ourselves. We have to make the decisions about what's right for us.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's time. If I don't know if Joshi wants to do the closing verse or if they would rather have me stumble through it, but
I'll do it.
great.
Abiding in this ephemeral world like a lotus in muddy water, the mind is pure and goes beyond. Thus we bow to Buddha. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, maha, prajna, paramita. Thank you, Dixie, and thank you everyone for your comments.
Thank
Thank-
you, Dixie, so much. That was great.
Thank you
Thank
all
you,
for
Dixie.
listening and not laughing me off of the stage.
Never.
No way. Sweet dreams. Thank you.